The power of being unpredictable. The moment people can predict you, they stop respecting your power. Not because you became weaker, but because you became readable. And once you are readable, you become manageable. Easy to prepare for, easy to influence, easy to ignore. That is why some people lose control of every room they enter before they even speak. Most people are taught to be consistent, be polite, be clear, be easy to understand, be stable. And in some areas of life, that matters. But in social dynamics, total predictability comes with a cost. Because if people always know what you will say, how you will react, what will upset you, what will win your approval, then they no longer respond to you with attention. They respond to you with strategy. They stop meeting you in real time. They start managing you in advance. And that is where your power quietly disappears. In this video, we are not talking about random behavior. We are talking about something far more precise: controlled unpredictability. The kind that makes people hesitate before underestimating you. The kind that makes manipulation harder. The kind that keeps your presence alive. Unpredictability makes you easy to handle. Think about the people others take for granted. The always available one, the always nice one, the one who always forgives, the one who always explains, the one who always reacts. These people may be good, they may even be intelligent, but they become easy to position because everyone around them learns the pattern. If I say this, they'll soften. If I ignore them, they'll come back. If I pressure them, they'll explain. If I disappoint them, they'll still stay. That is not connection. That is behavioral mapping. And once someone has mapped you, they no longer deal with your full presence. They deal with your pattern. And patterns are easy to exploit. The dangerous thing is, this often feels normal. You call it loyalty, patience, maturity, kindness. But in many situations, what people are really seeing is this: you can be predicted. And when that becomes clear, people become less careful with you, less attentive, less respectful. Because uncertainty creates alertness, but certainty creates comfort, and comfort often turns into disrespect faster than people realize. 2. The human brain is drawn to what it cannot fully map. The mind is always trying to reduce uncertainty. That is what it does. It categorizes. It anticipates. It labels. It predicts. This is efficient. It saves energy. But the moment someone becomes too easy to categorize, the brain stops paying close attention. They become familiar, and familiar things fade into the background. This is why predictability lowers tension, and lowered tension often lowers significance. But unpredictability does the opposite. It forces attention. Because when people cannot fully map you, they must stay alert. They must watch more carefully. They cannot relax into assumptions, and this changes the power dynamic immediately. Now, to be clear, unpredictability is not chaos. Chaos creates distrust. But controlled unpredictability creates gravity. It makes people pause. It makes them recalculate. It makes them realize they do not fully own the pattern. And the moment people realize they do not fully own the pattern, they treat you differently. Not always with warmth, but often with more caution, more attention, more respect. Because nothing commands focus like uncertainty wrapped in control. 3 people lose interest when they already know your response. Look closely at any relationship where respect has faded. A friendship, a workplace, a family dynamic. a romantic connection. You will often find the same hidden structure. One person has become too easy to predict. They always answer fast, always say yes, always forgive, always over-explain, always show hurt, always return. And because of that, the other person stops engaging with curiosity. They begin engaging with assumption. That changes everything. When someone already knows, you will text back, you will stay calm, you will not leave, you will keep trying, you will explain again. Then your presence no longer creates tension, and without tension, there is no psychological weight. Now you are not being chosen in the moment, you are being processed by memory. That is an invisible downgrade. It means people stop discovering you. They start using their old version of you. And that old version slowly replaces the real one. This is one of the reasons some people feel unseen in their own relationships. It is not always because others do not care. Sometimes it is because others are no longer meeting them fresh. They are meeting a pattern, a script, a predictable loop. And once you become a loop in someone else's mind, your impact weakens. The person who always reacts loses. First, reaction is one of the fastest ways to become predictable, because the moment people know what triggers you, they know where the control points are. If they know, criticism makes you defensive, silence makes you anxious, distance makes you disrespect, makes you emotional praise, makes you obedient. Then they know how to move you. Not always maliciously, sometimes unconsciously, but the result is the same. You become steerable. And steerable people lose power faster than they realize. This is why emotional reactivity is so costly in social dynamics. Not because emotion is weakness, but because predictable emotion becomes leverage. The person who always reacts teaches others where the buttons are. The found person who reacts differently or not immediately changes the board. Now there is uncertainty. Now there is hesitation. Now there is no easy script. And that forces people back into real interaction, instead of playing your pattern. Controlled unpredictability begins here, not with dramatic behavior, but with refusing to be emotionally programmable. 5. Controlled unpredictability is not randomness. This is where most people misunderstand the idea. They hear be unpredictable and imagine being erratic, moody, impulsive, inconsistent, difficult for no reason. That is not power. That is instability. And instability makes people distrust you, not respect you. Controlled unpredictability is something else entirely. It is when people cannot fully forecast your timing, reactions, or access, but they can still feel your center. You are not random. You are not messy. You are not emotionally chaotic. You are simply not easy to automate. There is a difference. For example, you do not always respond at the same speed. You do not always explain your decisions. You do not always reveal what you feel immediately. You do not always reward people with the same access. You do not always react. Moment tension appears. The pattern underneath is not disorder. The pattern underneath is control. And people can feel that. They may not be able to name it, but they feel the difference between instability and restraint. One feels unsafe, the other feels powerful. 6. If people can forecast your limits, they will test them. This is what happens in many social and professional environments. At first, people are careful. They do not yet know how much you tolerate when you push back, what makes you leave, what makes you stay silent. So they test lightly. They observe. They gather information. And if your responses are always the same, they learn the perimeter. Once they know the perimeter, they stop respecting it, because now they know exactly how far they can go. This is why some people experience a slow escalation of disrespect. Not because one big line was crossed, but because their limits became too readable, too measurable, too safe to test. The moment your boundaries become predictable in a way that never changes, they become negotiable in other people's minds. That is dangerous, because human beings are always reading consequences. If the consequence is known, mild, and survivable, many people will push further than they admit. But if the consequence is unclear, not dramatic, just unclear, they become more careful. Again, this is not about aggression. It is about not making your boundaries mechanically predictable. When people know the exact script of your tolerance, they eventually stop feeling your seriousness. 7. Mystery preserves. Attention. Attention is a form of power, and mystery protects it. People are most attentive when something is not fully explained, not fully resolved, not fully categorized. This is true in storytelling. It is true in attraction. It is true in authority. And it is true in everyday human behavior. The person who reveals everything immediately loses one of the most valuable psychological forces: unfinished meaning. When people fully know what you think, what you feel, what you will do, and how you work, they stop wondering. And when they stop wondering, your psychological weight decreases. Mystery is not silence for the sake of performance. It is disciplined restraint. It is knowing that not everything needs to be shown in real time. Not every emotion needs to be displayed. Not every plan needs to be announced. Not every reaction needs to be given instantly. The moment you stop narrating yourself so completely, people begin watching more carefully, because the mind leans toward what is incomplete. And that incompleteness, when paired with calmness, creates presence. The most powerful people break expectation without breaking character. This is the real art. Anyone can shock people once. Anyone can act strange. Anyone can disappear dramatically. Anyone can suddenly become cold. That is easy. But high-level social power does not come from theatrical unpredictability. It comes from measured deviation. You remain fundamentally yourself, calm, grounded, coherent. But sometimes you do not answer the event same way. You do not react on schedule. You do not follow the emotional script others expected. And that one break in expectation does more than 100 loud moves. Because now people realize, I don't fully have them figured out. That sentence changes behavior. It creates caution. It creates curiosity. It restores your dimensionality. Now they must meet you again, instead of just relying on memory. This is one of the deepest functions of controlled unpredictability. It returns you to the present in other people's minds. And once that happens, you stop being handled like a habit. 9. If you always make yourself easy, you become easy to replace. This is the harsh truth. The people who are always available, always accommodating, always understandable, always emotionally legible, often believe they are creating security. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they are simply removing tension, mystery, and consequence from the dynamic. And without those things, people start underestimating value. Human beings do not always respect what is always there. They adjust to it, normalize it, assume it. And once something is assumed, its absence is the only thing that reveals its weight. This is why some people are appreciated only after they pull back. Not because absence is manipulative, but because absence interrupts assumption. It reveals what constant availability had hidden, controlled. Unpredictability works similarly. It prevents your presence from becoming invisible through overexposure. It reminds people that you are not a machine, not a script, not a guarantee, not an endlessly readable resource. You are a person with range, restraint, timing, and choice. And choice is where power begins. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Predictability does not just make you easier to understand. It makes you easier to pre-process. That means people stop responding to who you are now. They start responding to what they already think you will do. And once that happens, your real presence is no longer required. Only your pattern is. That is the beginning of social power loss. You become less of a living force and more of a known mechanism. And known mechanisms are used, not respected. So the first lesson is simple. Stop making yourself so easy to forecast. Not through games, not through immaturity, not through random coldness, but through restraint, through timing, through refusing to let everyone feel they fully own your next move. Because the moment people realize they do not entirely know what you will do, they begin paying attention again. And attention is where power starts returning. If you've ever felt like people became too comfortable with you, comment 1. In part 2, we go deeper into the next layer. Why unpredictability creates tension, attraction, and psychological gravity. Part 2. Why uncertainty creates attraction and psychological gravity. People say they want stability, clarity, consistency, predictability. But watch what they actually respond. 2. It's not what is fully known, it's what is not fully resolved. There is a difference between being safe and being engaging. Safe feels good, but engaging holds attention. And attention is not driven by certainty, it is driven by tension. Not chaos, not confusion, but incomplete information. That slight gap between what people know about you and what they cannot fully predict, that gap is where curiosity lives. And curiosity creates gravity. 1. The mind does not let go of what it cannot finish. The brain is wired to close loops, to resolve patterns, to finish what is incomplete. That's why unfinished conversations stay in your head, unanswered messages linger longer, unclear reactions replay repeatedly, because unresolved signals create mental friction. Now apply this to people. If someone is fully predictable, fully readable, fully consistent in every reaction, there is no loop, nothing to process, nothing to revisit. But when someone is slightly unclear, slightly restrained, slightly non-linear, the brain stays engaged. Not because it's confused, but because it's not finished. Too uncertainty increases attention. This is where people get it wrong. They think unpredictability means being inconsistent, being unreliable, being emotionally unstable. That destroys trust. But controlled uncertainty does something else. It keeps people attentive, because now they cannot rely entirely on memory. They must observe, reevaluate, stay present. That shift from assumption to observation is what changes your impact. Now they're not interacting with your past version, they're watching your current one. And that creates engagement. 3. Attraction grows in the space between expectation and reality. This is not just romantic, it applies everywhere. Work, friendships, social, environments. Attraction is not built on complete predictability. It's built on tension between what I think will happen and what actually happens. If those two are always identical, interest fades. But when they slightly diverge, not dramatically, just enough, the brain leans in. Because now it must update, recalculate, adjust. And that process creates psychological pull. 4. When people can't fully read you, they project onto you. This is powerful and dangerous if misunderstood. When someone cannot fully define you, their mind fills in the gaps. They project assumptions, curiosity, meanings, significance, sometimes even more than what is actually there. This is why people who say less are often perceived as deeper, not always because they are, but because others are completing the D picture for them. And the less obvious you are, the more room there is for interpretation. Interpretation creates engagement, because now the other person is not just receiving you, they are participating in, constructing you. 5. Full transparency reduces tension. Most people believe, if I explain everything, things will be better. Sometimes that's true, but psychologically, total transparency removes tension. And without tension, interaction becomes flat. There is no discovery, no curiosity, no anticipation, just information. And information alone rarely creates emotional engagement. This doesn't mean hiding everything. It means understanding that not everything needs to be revealed immediately. Not every thought needs to be spoken in real time. Not every reaction needs to be explained, because when everything is known instantly, nothing is felt deeply. 6. People pay more attention when access is not constant. Availability shapes value. If you are always responsive, accessible, present, predictable in timing, people adjust. They stop appreciating the interaction because it becomes expected. But when access has rhythm, not randomness, but rhythm, attention increases. Because now, your presence is not assumed, it is experienced. This is not about playing hard to get. It is about not making your presence automatic. 7. Unpredictability disrupts complacency. Complacency happens when nothing changes. When every interaction follows the same pattern, same tone, same pace, same reactions. At that point, people stop engaging actively. They shift into passive mode. But the moment something changes, slightly, not dramatically, just enough, it disrupts that comfort. Now, attention returns, because the pattern has shifted and the brain must re-engage. 8. The person who is not easily categorized holds attention longer. Humans, like categories, it helps them simplify the world. This person is like this. This person always does that. This person reacts this way. But when someone doesn't fit cleanly into a category, it creates friction. Not negative friction, cognitive friction. And that friction keeps attention alive, because the brain cannot compress them into a simple label. So it keeps observing, trying to understand, trying to map. And as long as that mapping is incomplete, attention remains. 9. Controlled distance creates value. Distance is not rejection, it's structure. When everything is always available, nothing feels scarce. And scarcity, when used correctly, is not manipulation, it's contrast. It allows presence to have weight. When you are not constantly explaining, constantly reacting, constantly available, your moments of engagement become more noticeable, more defined. more impactful. Here's the core idea. Predictability reduces effort. Unpredictability increases attention. And attention is the foundation of influence. When people cannot fully rely on their assumptions about you, they must engage with you directly, in real time, without shortcuts, without scripts. And that restores your presence. So now the idea becomes clearer. You don't need to become confusing. You don't need to become distant. You don't need to become inconsistent. You need to become less automatic, less predefined, less easy to reduce into a pattern. Because the moment people cannot fully automate their response to you, they start paying attention again. If you've ever noticed that, people treat you differently when you stop being predictable. Comment 1. In part 3, we go deeper into the most important layer: how to become unpredictable without losing trust or stability. Part 3. How to be unpredictable without losing trust. There is a fine line between being unpredictable and being unstable. Cross it, and people stop respecting you. Stay within it, and people can't control you. Most people try to become unpredictable the wrong way. They change moods, randomly act, cold without reason, disappear dramatically, become inconsistent, and instead of gaining power, they lose credibility. Because trust requires one thing: a stable core. So the real question is not, how do I become unpredictable? The real question is, what stays consistent while everything else becomes harder to predict? 1. Your values must be predictable. This is the foundation. People should always know what you stand for, what you don't tolerate, what matters to you. That part stays clear. But what they should not fully predict is how quickly you respond, how much you reveal, how you react emotionally in the moment. Values equals stable. Reactions equals flexible. That balance creates respect. 2. Stop reacting on schedule. Most people are predictable in timing. They reply, immediately react, instantly respond emotionally in real time. This creates a pattern, and patterns can be used. So instead, break the timing, not randomly, but intentionally. Sometimes you respond fast. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you speak immediately. Sometimes you pause. That small shift alone changes how people approach you. 3. Delay your emotional reactions. Emotion is not the sign. Problem. Immediate emotion is. Because instant reactions reveal your triggers, your pressure points, your emotional map. And once people see that, they know how to move you. So instead of reacting in the moment, hold it. Not suppress, just delay. That delay creates space, and in that space, you regain control. 4. Don't explain every shift. Sometimes you will. Change your mind, respond differently, step back, disengage, and most people feel the need to explain it. But explaining everything removes unpredictability. Not every shift needs a speech. Sometimes you act, and that's enough. 5. Control your availability. Availability is one of the strongest patterns people learn. If you are always reachable, responsive, present, you become predictable. So instead, create rhythm, not distance. Rhythm, you are present, but not constant. Engaged, but not automatic. 6. Speak less about your next move. The more you explain your plans, the easier you are to map. People know what you're about to do, how you think, what direction you're going. and that reduces your leverage. So instead, move quietly, not secretive, just not over-explained. 7. Break small expectations. You don't need dramatic changes. You don't need to shock people. You just need to break small expectations. For example, responding differently than usual, not reacting where you normally would, staying calm where others expect emotion. Small shifts, big effect. 8. Keep your center calm. This is what separates power from chaos. Even when your behavior is less predictable, your energy remains stable. Calm, grounded, controlled. So people feel, I don't fully know what they'll do, but I know they're in control. That combination creates respect. Don't try to be unpredictable, remove automation. This is the biggest shift. You don't need to perform unpredictability. You just need to stop being automatic. Stop reacting the same way every time, responding on reflex following emotional scripts. Because once you remove automation, natural unpredictability appears. The goal is not to confuse people. The goal is to make them realize they cannot fully run a script on you. Once that happens, they engage differently, more carefully, more attentively, more respectfully. You are not trying to become mysterious. You are removing predictability from your reactions while keeping clarity in your identity. That is the balance. CTA if you've ever felt like people could read you too easily, comment 1. In the final part, we bring everything together. How to use unpredictability in real life without pushing people away. Part 4. How to use it without pushing people away. Now you understand something most people don't. Being predictable feels safe, but it slowly removes your impact. So the real question is, how do you become harder to read without becoming harder to trust? Because this is where people fail. They hear, be unpredictable, and turn it into distance, coldness, detachment, inconsistency. And suddenly, people stop engaging with them, not because they became powerful, but because they became uncomfortable to deal with. So the goal is not to create confusion. The goal is to create controlled uncertainty. Enough to keep attention, not enough to break trust. 1 inch, work. Don't become a script. In professional environments, predictability often turns into expectation. You become the one who always fixes problems, the one who always says yes, the one who always responds immediately, the one who always explains everything. And over time, people stop appreciating it. They start depending on it. So instead, you still deliver. You still perform. But you stop being automatic. You don't. Always respond instantly. Always over-explain. Always take on extra responsibility without pause. That shift alone changes how people position you. 2 inches, relationships. Stop being emotionally automatic. In relationships, predictability often shows up as emotional patterns. They know when you'll get upset, when you'll forgive, when you'll come back, when you'll explain. And once those patterns are clear, they stop being careful. Not always intentionally, but because the outcome feels guaranteed. So instead, you stay emotionally present, but not automatic. You don't always react immediately. Resolve everything instantly. Explain your feelings on demand, and that creates space. Space changes dynamics. 3 inches, conversation. Say less than expected. Most people say more than necessary, especially when they want to be understood. They feel pressure. They want approval. So conversations become heavy, predictable, long. Instead, cut it earlier. Say what matters and stop. Now the other person leans, in asks, more reveals, more, because you didn't fill everything. 4 inches. Conflict. Don't follow the script. Conflict is where predictability is most dangerous, because people expect you to defend you, to explain you, to react emotionally, you to escalate. And if you follow that script, you lose. So instead, shift the pattern. Pause. Respond slower. Stay calm. Say less. Now, the dynamic breaks. And once the script breaks, control resets. 5 inches social settings. Don't over-reveal yourself. People often reveal everything too quickly. Their thoughts, their plans, their opinions, their emotions. And once everything is visible, there is nothing left to discover. So instead, keep some layers, not hidden, just not immediate. Let people earn access, learn over time, observe. That pacing creates depth. 6, use timing, not drama. You don't need dramatic behavior. You don't need to shock people. You need timing. When you respond, speak, react, engage. Timing alone creates unpredictability without damaging your identity. 7, don't try to control others, control your pattern. This is critical. Unpredictability is not about controlling people. It's about removing their ability to control you. So instead of focusing on what will they think, focus on, am I acting on autopilot? Because autopilot behavior is where predictability lives. 8, stability plus uncertainty equals respect. This is the formula. If you are stable plus predictable, safe but ignore Dunstable plus unpredictable, avoided. But if you are stable plus slightly unpredictable, respected. Because now people feel they're grounded but not easy. And that combination changes everything. You don't need to be hard to read, just not easy to control. This is the final correction. You don't need to become mysterious. You don't need to become distant. You don't need to become silent all the time. You just need to remove automatic reactions, automatic availability, automatic explanations. Once those disappear, you naturally become harder to map. The moment you stop being predictable in your reactions, people stop interacting with your pattern and start interacting with you again in real time, without shortcuts, without assumptions. That's when your presence returns. You don't become powerful by controlling others. You become powerful when others can no longer control you easily. And that starts with one simple shift. You stop being predictable in ways that make you easy to handle. If this changed how you see your own behavior, comment 1. And this week, watch yourself closely. Not what you say, but what you repeat. Because the pattern you repeat is the pattern people learn.